All right. Welcome, everybody, to the Boston Climate Action Network's Work at BCAN webinar. My name is Hassan Faruqi. I'm the Executive Director of the Boston Climate Action Network. And prior to that, I was the Advocacy Director. And so what I thought we'd do in this webinar is just talk a little bit about who we are, how we look at issues at BCAN, and the role and future roles that we'll be hiring for that you've doubtlessly heard about. And then, of course, we can take your questions from the chat. So let's get started. In terms of who we are, you may have already seen this, but we are an organization that has been around for almost 25 years in the city of Boston. We organize and educate and mobilize residents in the city of Boston around the issue of climate change. And we are particularly focused on city level climate policy. As a lot has changed, largely due to our work in the 24 years that we have been operating. First and foremost, we've been able to elect a heck of a lot of people who understand the urgency of climate justice. We've also, through that, been able to leverage partners in the city hall, whether it be the mayor, city council, to make really important legislative change happen around climate change in the city of Boston. We always center environmental justice in everything that we do. And we look at this really broadly, right? It's about understanding that, look, climate change affects everyone, but not everyone is starting from the same place. And so all of the existing inequities in social and political and economic power manifest in the climate crisis. The people who have the least of that power are hit first and worst by the effects of climate change. And all of our work centers that. It's about looking at the folks in our environmental justice neighborhoods like Roxbury and Mattapan and Dorchester and East Boston, who are really on the front lines, quite literally, of the climate crisis. And whether that be extreme heat or coastal flooding or air pollution, we have to always understand folks are not experiencing the same issues in the same way. And a policy and program and funding response to that needs to take that into account. So, how have we been doing? Well, pretty well, I'd say. We always start with where the emissions are coming from, the greenhouse gas emissions that cause the worst effects of the climate crisis. 70% of greenhouse gas emissions in the city of Boston come from buildings. And so that's really motivated so much of our work, especially in the last 5 and 10 years. It started with, on the buildings front, the passage of community choice electricity, which is a municipal aggregation program that, among other things, allows you in your home or your apartment to opt in to get 100% of your electricity purchased by the city with renewable energy. So it's one of the most powerful ways we can use the purchasing power of our city to put more renewable energy on the grid and have less fossil fuels. But most significantly, our advocacy helped to pass the Building Emissions Reduction and Disclosure Ordinance, or BERDO. BERDO says that the largest buildings in our city, 20,000 square feet or more, 15 apartment units or more, need to be net zero emissions by 2050. And the owners of those buildings actually need to tell us what their emissions are. And that has resulted in meaningful, substantial work that's already starting to happen and will continue to happen over the next years and decades to decarbonize our buildings. And we are not stopping there. Most recently, we focused our energy on Boston public schools to make sure that all of our children have the best places to learn, starting with their facilities, which are in bad shape for all kinds of reasons. And with facilities, we want to make sure we stop burning fossil fuels in our schools, and we have good indoor air quality through things like ventilation. And we've been really successful, most significantly, through the passage of an executive order that will mandate that every new construction and every major renovation of a Boston public school will be fossil fuel free for the first time in Boston's history. And we're also focusing on housing because we know we got to do a lot of work to retrofit and renovate all of our homes. But those repairs cost money. And even if a landlord can afford to do that, the last thing we want is for those cost increases to be passed on to tenants in the form of higher rent. Because we know we're not going to solve one crisis of climate change by making another crisis of housing affordability worse. So we need to have homes that are green and healthy and affordable. And that's what we're pushing for. And we're going to start a heck of a lot of new campaigns this year because all of this success has meant we have gotten the investments to now, for the first time, hire a second full-time staff member, which, as you've probably heard, is the Advocacy Director position. And so let's talk a little bit more about that position and how we're really thinking about this, right? So now this is the first time, again, that we're really doing this two staff member thing. And what we really see the Advocacy Director doing is helping to bring in our volunteer base, recruit and retain them, and help them build their own skills. If you're starting with no experience, which is totally fine, let's help get you acclimated to the world of climate politics and the ways in which we can have an effect on what our government does. The Advocacy Director position is also responsible for helping coordinate all of our internal campaigns, the campaign priorities that we have as an organization, and meeting with all the allies that we work with, because we are never going to do a campaign without allies. So this is the role, and you've probably seen the job description already. If you have specific questions about the job description, feel free to put them in the chat. But what we really look for in the candidates that we're hiring is a deep commitment to environmental justice. We know that, again, people are not all starting from the same place. And folks who understand that and who know how to center that in their advocacy are important. We want to have some connection to the city of Boston. You don't have to have grown up here, but you have to have some familiarity with our neighborhoods. And we want to see some level of previous advocacy or organizing experience. And let's make clear, that looks many different ways for many different people. And so often, the advocacy that people do is not paid. And so we fully understand that might not show up as a line on your resume, but that's why the cover letter is important. And please also include on resumes any volunteer experience or part-time experience or experience that you've done beyond your full-time role, because we want to hear about everything. We want to know how you have been working, organizing, advocating, whether that be on climate and environmental issues or on other issues. Good organizing is good organizing. So we want to hear about all of it. And we don't care about your educational background. So if you didn't go to a fancy school, if you didn't go to a college or university, period, that's okay. We care that you have the experience and the insight to organize and mobilize residents. That's something that everyone can have, regardless of whether they have a degree. So that's important. But what are you getting if you do this little job? Great question. Well, we want to make sure that we really support our employees. This is something that's deeply important to me. Part of the way we do that is by a competitive salary and strong benefits, including health insurance and dental insurance, which is very good, by the way. Ask me how I know. And making sure that we're really supporting you as you build up your own skills and level up in your own career. Professional development and growth opportunities are super important to me. And so within BCAN, we're going to make sure that at every turn, our new advocacy director has those kinds of opportunities to build up their own skills, to meet important people, whether those be elected officials and other decision makers in government, whether those be allies and other community-based organizations, whether those be folks in the private sector that we cross paths with from time to time. And most importantly, whether those be community members in our city, in all of our neighborhoods. So that's a bit of an overview of the opportunities. If you have any questions or comments about this process, please feel free to put them in the chat right now, and we can continue to answer those questions as we go along. Great. Now, how, you may ask, we may want to apply. If you go to our website, bostoncan, that's CAN.org, you can view the position under the Jobs and Internships tab of the Get Involved section and submit your application today. And it's just about a resume and a cover letter. The cover letter does not have to be perfect. We just want to hear from you about your story, your background. Please do not use ChatGPT to make a perfect and polished cover letter. I would rather see a less perfect letter that's actually written by you so we can really get to know you better. So that's really important. Now, from there, once you submit the application, we'll send you a little email, say, hey, thanks for applying. And we really want to see as many applications as possible by our priority application deadline, which is on February the 20th. And that's really the time that we'll start reaching out to folks about interviews and reference checks. Now, in terms of the whole process, we'll start with either a phone screen or an interview, depending on what the hiring committee feels. And as you progress through the process, we'll eventually reach out for your references. We'll ask for 3 references. We'll give them a call or send them an email, ask for their input, and then eventually extend you an offer or let you know if you're not progressing as far in the recruitment process as quickly as possible. So we'll turn around a decision fairly quickly. Now, in terms of our other positions, we'll talk about those in just a second. As you put in questions, I'll talk a little bit about really how we operate and how we see our theory of change at BCAN. We have always been about making sure that we get policies passed through every means possible. And we're all about grassroots organizing, particularly for this position. And that's really our kind of outsider theory of change, right? Making change from the outside of government. But we also understand, particularly with some of the folks that we have in positions of power right now, they generally want to do some of the things that we want them to do. And so the insider theory of change is also something that we will use. And so we really see it as a 2-pronged approach, the inside-outside theory. And that really sets us apart from other organizations, as does our sole focus on Boston climate politics. Now, we are predominantly in this position, looking, as I said, for that outsider theory of change, for folks who have that grassroots organizing experience. And really the way we see that is just about relationships. It's about making sure that we're keeping in touch with our allies and our partners, be those folks in other organizations or volunteers in our own organization, and making sure that throughout this whole process, we're building up those relationships, developing those relationships, because those relationships are everything. We always like to say that we operate at the speed of trust. And that is very much true and what we would expect in our new advocacy director. Now, I also mentioned some other positions. You might be wondering, what are those? Well, we envision at least 1 or 2 summer interns. And the way that those internships work is we'll pay you, first of all, which is important. And we would really ideally love to have interns who progress with us beyond the summer. That's not always the case, but we've been really benefited by some wonderful interns over the years who stayed into the fall and spring beyond their internship. And that's great because that allows you to really build up momentum, keep building your skills, and keep pushing forward the work of our organization. That's important. We envision soon listing a communications internship position for the summer. And that's a position that we've held for several years now. And that position is really at the heart of all of our external facing communications, from our newsletter, which goes out twice a month, to our social media, to all of our press releases, to everything else. And that's going to be a role that I see as really central to our team. And it's a role that will report directly to me as the executive director. So that's an overview of our roles: advocacy director, communications intern. And with that, I'd love to take questions, so please feel free to put them in the chat. The first question is about volunteering. How do we find out about volunteering opportunities? I joined BCAN last fall and did not have an opportunity to volunteer due to class conflict. No worries. Right now, our campaigns are in a transitional moment because of some of the success that we've seen, as I mentioned earlier in the webinar. And as a result of that, we're not having regular campaign meetings. However, we are having regular meetings of our action team. And our action team is the collection of all of our members across every campaign. The action team is the central base of volunteers. And that meeting happens twice in a month on the 2nd and 4th Thursday of each month. It happens in the evening over Zoom. And if you're interested in getting involved with the action team, you can go to our website and go to the Get Involved tab and then fill out the volunteer interest form. And we'll reach out to you with some more information about our organization and some information about how you can join our action team meetings. Our next action team funny you mentioned, is tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. over Zoom. And that is also on our events calendar, which is at our website, bostoncan.org. Now, most of the volunteer opportunities are things that we'll communicate within those action team meetings. And I also recognize not everyone's going to be able to make that meeting because you may have scheduling conflicts, but we also want to make sure that we're providing those opportunities outside of those meetings. And so paying attention to our newsletter is going to be critical, as we'll communicate any of those opportunities that are lower context and require lower capacity, such as signing a petition or filling out a survey. And if you want to get more involved and you have capacity, but you just can't quite make that one action team meeting, send me an email. My email is hessann@bostoncan.org. You can also go to our website, and under the Our Team section, you can see our email right there. So that's how you can get involved. Are there any other questions from anyone? All right, fantastic. Well, if you have any other questions at all, as I mentioned, my email is hessann@bostoncan.org. I'll put it in the chat as well if anyone is interested in reaching out and talking further. I'm happy to answer any and all questions about whatever it is that you want to know about our organization or about our positions that we're interested in hiring for. And with that, I look forward to reading all of your applications, seeing you all at action team meetings, and hopefully hiring one or two of you in the coming months. All right. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a great night, and please continue this conversation via email. Thanks so much.